All right, what is up, guys? It's your boy Sean Flac 2.0 coming at you live and direct here from the studio, and I guess we're actually recorded. It's gonna be me and Kyron in the studio today, and we're starting our new little. It's going to be a 4-part mini series, and kind of see where we go. We're going to be talking about movies, and the show or the name of the show is going to be called the Intermission. So. Generally it's going to be, there's usually an intermission when it comes to shows where you could stop, relax. So hopefully this will be a place where you can learn about some of the movies, learn about us a little bit, and, we'll talk about different types of movies. And, yeah, that's basically it. So if you guys don't know who I am, I'm a host of the Dad's Live podcast. And so you can check us out there. And I know this show is not going to be a pod. It's going to be recorded. So we'll be able to have some outtakes and things like that. Hopefully you guys will find some fun. Again, my co-host here in the studio is Kyron. Kyron, say what's up. How you doing tonight?
What up, what up? How's everybody doing?
Just a little bit about us. Me and Kyron, we worked together on other projects before. We were part of the same streaming group when streaming was a big thing at the time. I loved working with him on projects. I worked with his wife on projects as well, like blogging and things like that, and just in general content creating. Kyron, you used to do the 3D printing thing, correct?
Yeah, the craft and chat. Yeah, we used to do that where we would make all different types of stuff and yeah, chit chat, relax.
Yeah. So Kyron was doing that. I think I tuned in a couple episodes with that. What are you doing what are you doing nowadays, Kyron?
Working. I am doing a lot of working. Unfortunately, I wish I had more free time. That and I gotten into motorcycles, so I've started learning about motorcycles and riding and stuff like that. And my wife got me a new one for Christmas, and whoever she bought it from wasn't quite the honest Joe, so we've been finding some things wrong with it. So we're learning how to work on a motorcycle. But in the process, I've met some good friends doing it. So yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I also saw that you were still. Are you still doing videos on like ride videos and stuff like that? Did you want to talk about that a little bit? Is that something you're still doing, or did you kind of pause on that?
It's only a pause because the bike's down right now. So yeah, once the bike gets back up, yeah, we got a bunch of trips planned where we have destinations where I'll GoPro the whole trip. That way, people can see the view from a motorcycle. So yeah,
Okay.
check me out for that.
And speaking of which, where can they check you out for that content, the stuff that you posted, and some of the stuff that you're going to be bringing up?
Moto Kyron on YouTube. So
Okay. Moto Kyron on YouTube. Check them out. We'll make sure that the information is in the description below so you guys can check that out. So we worked before. We worked together before. And I interviewed Kyron for our group. And one of the things that we had talked about was movies. And I was at the time, the newer Spider-Man movie had just come out, right? Was it Homecoming?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so we talked about that, and he was like, we could stop the interview now, and I could talk about Spider-Man Homecoming all day. And I was like, oh, okay, I love movies too. So, once we kind of start splitting off, kind of do our own thing, I love talking about movies, and I wanted to work with Kyron just because he had said that. Like, he's a movie buff as well. And so I was like, well, I want to do a new show where we do talk about movies because I do love watching movies. And I want to get back into watching more movies because I love them. And so we started talking again. I reached out to Kyron, say, hey, are you interested on doing a little show just to kind of see and test out the waters? And obviously, you guys know what he said because he's here, right? And where we wanted to start is what is our favorite movies. Now, I will have to admit, I did not do the homework on the very first movie we're supposed to do. And I was like, well, I'll just cut it. And I don't want to tell you what it was because we are going to talk about it. But Kyron graciously let me take, okay, hey, don't miss this part of the movie. Let's not cut it short. Watch the whole thing and we'll do it another day. And Kyron did not drop the ball, right? Because we talked about what our favorite movies was, and my favorite movie is The Five Deadly Venoms, or it would be called The Five Venoms if you looked it up now. So he went and watched that movie, and I was supposed to go watch this movie. And then, so today we're going to be talking about. Well, that was my favorite movie, and then Kyron shared with us that his favorite movie was what, Kyron?
Dazed and Confused.
Right, Dazed and Confused. And so we're going to talk about the Five Venoms, Dazed and Confused for sure, and then we'll do 2 surprise movies for you guys to, kind of check out. So Kyron did his homework, and I want to say thank you, because if he didn't do his homework, then we wouldn't have a show to talk about today, because I dropped the ball on this one. So thank you, Kyron. We're gonna give Kyron the horns for that because he did his part. So how we do that? Okay. So my favorite movie is The Five Deadly Venoms, and I'm really big into that type of martial arts film. Like, I'm big into martial arts. So just real quick, just to kind of go over like the plot. It's like one of those Shaw Brother kung fu movies. I remember watching it a very long time ago, and then I'd watch all these other kung fu movies and things like that. But my favorite one was this because it had like a plot twist, and especially for like its time. So that's why that's my favorite movie. So let's kind of talk about a couple of things, just some history about it. It was originally released October 12th, 1978. So obviously, it's, in that. It was distributed by the Shaw Brothers Studio, which, if you're not familiar with that, they're the ones that brought a lot of those kung fu movies from the east to the west. So they got distributed through that. Now, I'm not going to tell you who the main stars are because I'm going to butcher the shit out of their names. So I'm not going to go over that.
Ah, come on.
It was directed by Chang Che, and it was written by Ni Kwan and Chang Che. So it was written and directed by the same person. And like I said, I don't want to butcher their names because I couldn't tell you the actor and correlate them with the actual character they played. So just real quick. Again, I watched it a very long time ago. Kyron, when obviously you watched it, did you watch it previously before we decided to do it for the show?
No, but I'm used to this style. Like, I grew up during Bloodsport and all that. So, and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, all the Drunken Master. So I'm used to this style of videography.
Okay.
But it took me back, right? Because we're kind of spoiled with all the stuff that we get now. So this kind of takes you like back to your roots and shows you like how they like had to portray all this different, blood and
like
just the way
spitting out like the blood pill or whatever it is.
Like this movie gets the worst sound critic of all time. It's like you go and you're like, what the heck? What was the sound guy thinking? Like, he couldn't sync it up just a little bit. But back then, what were they doing? They were taping layers over layers to get that stuff
right
to work back then. So yeah, and it was. Did you see? I mean, it was a pretty long movie, an hour and 42 minutes.
Yes, especially for its time.
And I'm trying now. I think we've just evolved, like how sensitive we are as people. But that was a rated R. I'll be honest. I'm having a problem finding the rated R in that movie. There wasn't. I mean. It was violent, but everything was thrown, right? All the punches were thrown. It wasn't... it was definitely... You could tell it was a movie, that it wasn't real life. I mean, it was...
Right.
It was choreographed. That's... Right. It was actually choreographed. So, I mean... But I couldn't find the rated R. I think it's the blood. It had to have been the blood in it, and that was... I don't know what they used as blood. I'm trying to figure like in my mind, like back then, like because you can tell they like
Like a
so like when it was coming out their ears, they just like took a paintbrush and painted a red streak down.
right.
I'm not quite sure what the blood was, but it was like water. So it was like, geez,
Or like
if you cut someone open and their blood was that thin, it would all drained out in like 2 seconds.
right. Or like when they spit out the mouth. They get hit and
Yeah,
then
right.
all the blood would pop out their mouth. I'm like, that's some internal damage right there. When you're you're doing that. Yeah, and even like obviously the moves and the things they had to do to like do the special effects, like having the lizard guy, connect to the wall, or the snake guy on his back. He was kind of doing his little moves. Like, did they like attach a rope to him and drag him on the floor while he's trying to do his moves on the ground? Um, but yeah, I mean, I think, in my opinion, if I was to remake one of these old school movies, this would be the one. And just because to me it was so influential about the plot, and we'll talk about the plot here in a little bit. But what was your first initial? Like, I want us to rate it later on, and obviously the ratings for an older movie and the standards that we have. But what was your first impression after watching it? Like, what was your first impression of the movie in general?
Nah, it was really decent. I didn't have really much negative like to say about like the plot, and like you said, there's a few twists in there and some unexpected things that you just don't at first you're like, oh, they got me on that one. And like I don't know, and it's the civilians versus the police, and right how that style police and what you think of now, not even
Yeah, right,
night and day, right? Like
right.
completely different. Yeah, they were police, but they weren't.
Yeah, they were
Yeah,
more
it
like
was.
security guards more than they were actually police.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but no, I thought it was, I thought it was fairly decent for its time. I mean, definitely low budget, right? They didn't have a lot to work with, but their costumes,
Yeah,
wardrobe is better the term. Um, their wardrobe was whoever put that together. I mean, they spent some. They weren't taking shortcuts. I think that's what you'll see now is if you look closely at some of this stuff, like you get these nerds, these like hyper nerds, they're zooming in on posters and they're going, "Look, Thor's hammer's at a 22-degree angle instead of a 45." Right? I mean,
right.
they but no, I think the quality of the movie for the budget, I'm sure they met budget.
Oh yeah, let's take a look. So you got budget numbers here. Let's see here, and I'm just looking this up on Wikipedia. So, we got to take some of this information with a grain of salt. It said it hit the box office, and this is Hong Kong money, so it's 1.8 million. And I don't know what they use as far as their currency goes.
Probably
Let's
yen.
Okay. Let's see here. Does it say anything about their budget? It does not show what the budget is, and maybe if I was to go to a different website, like maybe IMDb or whatever, and take a look at it, they might have more information on it. But okay, so obviously I watched it a long time ago. I've watched it multiple times. My big thing about the movies is I like the off dub. That just you're just a second off. I think it brings character to these types of movies. I also believe that the choreography, obviously, back in the day, the kung fu movies and fight scenes are way different and more elaborate now, more fluid. But again, for what they did and what they had back then, I mean, again, very memorable. Um, okay, so let's talk about it, right? So as far as the plot goes, it kind of starts off with a master and a student, and finding out that the master's dying, and he's tried all these different herbs and things like that to um, heal himself, and he can't. So he realizes he's dying, and he has one student left. So he's telling the student this story of he had of the Venom clan. And so the new student, he's the last student of the Venom clan. This is the last master, and he was saying, the Venom clan is feared amongst many men, and the student's like, why? Like he doesn't know, and that's like one of the for me one of the lines that he was like, why? Like why is the Venom clan? Like the Venom clan did terrible things back in the day, and they had five main students. And what they wanted to do was the Venom Clan was so secretive that when they trained with masks on. And they were saying that he was explaining the dynamics of the Venom Clan. So the Venom Clan had five main students. They all wore masks, and they had connections to each other, and then they didn't. So a total of five, and five students. They all took on a persona of something from uh, I guess a lizard or something like that. So you had student number one. He took on the centipede, right? So he had his little mask and had the centipede on it. Student number two was the snake, and so he mimicked the snake. Student number three was the scorpion, and the scorpion I guess relied on kicks. Then you had the lizard, and the lizard was able to like cling on the walls, and then the toad was the one that had basically the iron skin technique. So he was the one that was invulnerable. And so they're saying one and two knew each other, and then three, four, and five they didn't know each other. And basically, what he said to his last student was, after he gave them like who they were, he was like, "Well, what I want you to do is I want you to go out and find them, and if any of the students kind of went back to the Venom clan's nefarious ways, you gotta kill them." And he told the student, he was like, "You have skills from each of these, but you're not a master of one. So in order for you to beat the others, you have to team up with one of the other students." And that was his, the master's dying wish, was to ensure that the Venom clan was no longer used for evil. So what he did was he gave him a starting point, because he was like, "Oh, well, how do I find these students?" And then there was a news that broke out that one of the original masters of the Venom clan, they found out who he was and where he was, and he had a stash of money. And so he suspected that all the students would converge in this one area or this one town or city or province to find the original master of the Venom clan and basically kill him and take his stash so they could go off and do whatever, right? I don't want to go too much into it, but the plot, as you know, so now you have the student, now he's in the town, and it was interesting how, like, you figure this is a town, but you could tell it's a set, right? Like, it's supposed to be outdoors, but everything definitely looks like it's indoors. As far as, like, lighting goes, you could tell everything was, like, indoors. So you figure it's supposed to be like a town outside with markets and things like that. But you could just tell, like, it's interesting, it's strange. So the student is going around like a bum. So he's walking around this town. He looks like a bum, kind of like messing around and kind of seeing who's who. And then they kind of open up to all the different students. It turns out that one of the students is a cop. Like, you find that out. And then he's friends with the toad. And I want to say it's the lizard and the toad know each other. And then you don't know who the scorpion is. But then you find out that the centipede and the snake, they know each other. And so the centipede, he's the one wearing the red costume, right? So he's the one that he does all these different kicks. And so he looks like, to me, he looked like General Zod from the Christopher Reeve Superman, except wearing all red. And
Yeah.
and then he knew the snake. And so in this, the snake is actually like an affluent, I don't know what you'd call it, like a lord or something like that, but he's rich. Or he's rich. He's portrayed as being rich. And so they know each other. And they're, yeah, right. They're trying to figure out, like, who is this guy. So they're doing their own investigation. And then it turns out that the lizard and the toad know each other. Now the toad, he's wearing like a yellow tunic. So you got the centipede wearing a red tunic. You got the snake, he wore like a blue silver tunic. And then the toad is wearing a yellow tunic. And then of course we talked about, wardrobes, right? The cop is wearing, I guess I don't know if that's like an imperial cop costume or whatever it is, but that's his thing. And so they're going through and they're trying to figure out who's who. And so the toad, how did it happen? So as they're going through, they're figuring out, and then the centipede, he finds out who this old man is, and he goes into this old man's into his house, and basically kills the whole family. But he doesn't. He kills the old man before he could find out where this map is. So he leaves out the house, and there's like this little boy that like watches him leave the house, and then all the cops come, including the lizard, and they figure out like, oh, okay, now it's kind of known that old man Jones, or what, I know his name's not Old Man Jones, right? But they figure out like, oh, hey, this was the old guy that must have been the old Venom clan leader, and they're trying to figure out like who has where the stash is. And this is where you see the blood, right? Kyron, like they're all blood hanging out from their mouth, and so yeah, it's pretty interesting because I always think rated R. I always think like, oh, there's not a sex scene in this, right? So you're kind of thinking,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like where is this rated R version coming from? So now they're trying to do their investigations, and then what they end up doing is they end up the toad is framed for this murder, and so but of course the toad is his invulnerable skin. So they try to capture him. They try to blame him for this murder, and they try to capture him, but they can't. Like he has to surrender, right? Because he has like the iron skin technique. And so they end up doing it. They end up trying to torture him, but you can't torture, somebody that has iron skin. So what they end up doing is obviously we don't know who the fifth character is at this time, but they find out like there's always each technique has its own weakness. And so with the toad, his weakness, they had to figure out where his soft spot was. And the way they did that was they put dude in Iron Maiden, right? And so for you guys don't know what Iron Maiden is, it's a chamber with like 1,000 pins in it, and they put him in it, and apparently like his soft spot was like he's under his arm or whatever. But once they put him in it, they broke his technique, and they put him in jail. They framed him for the murder, and then he ends up getting killed in jail. Now, do you remember how he got killed, Kyron?
Mm-mm.
So they suffocate him. So he no longer has his iron skin technique, and they basically take wet paper towels and put it on
Oh,
his
yeah.
face. Yeah,
And then and they wet the towel so that the air can't come through any.
right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so they end up, killing the toad, and now I believe what's it the cop? I think the cop, and that's the lizard. He finds where this map is, right? So he goes and does his investigation, and he sees like a broken red candle, and then he goes and he sees and he pulls the map out, like, oh shit, this is the map of where the thing is. Now this is what got me, because through the whole movie, and I don't want to do necessarily a spoiler alert, but and I can't remember, maybe because you watched it just recently, but I can't remember them ever finding the money. Like I don't remember a point where they were like, "Oh yeah, we found the money," but they got the map. So they have the map. They killed their friend, the Toad friend of the cop, and then now obviously they figure out who the two bad guys are, which are going to be the centipede and the snake. And so now the student has to team up. He has to figure out like, well, who are the other people, and he finds out that the cop is the other person, and he could team up with him, the lizard, to beat the other two. But we still don't know who the fifth person is, right? Because they got the toad, the centipede, the snake. Um, what is it? The snake, and then the lizard, and the one they're missing is the scorpion. So they don't know who the scorpion is. So they start fighting, and they're like, okay, well, basically we got to kill you guys because you guys are the bad guys, and now we're the good guys. And the lizard teams up with the student because they framed and killed the toad. And so he's like, well, F you guys, we're going to kill you guys because you killed my friend. And so now they're doing this fight, and then the scorpion reveals himself. And I guess the scorpion's thing is he uses knives. And so he ends up, so now you're like, oh, I didn't know who this person was. The scorpion turns out to be the cop's buddy. So like his partner. And so you're like, okay, this guy, he doesn't act even like as if he is one, but toward the end they're fighting and the bad guys are losing, and so now the scorpion comes in and he like hits the lizards in the ears. But he uses he gets his daggers and he gets the guys in the ears, and then so now you found out who the scorpion is. So I'm not going to go because there's a lot of choreograph. There's a lot of fighting. The one thing I liked is that they always, during the fight scenes, when they start doing their techniques, they do flashbacks of when they're doing their techniques back in the school. So anyway.
Yeah, like how they learned the move.
Right. And so like the dude's like the centipede's kicking a bunch of plates. And so when he does his little super move, it goes back to how he's kicking the plates and how he's kicking the guy in the chest. Or how the lizard clings onto the wall and why, how he could do that. And that's kind of like how they defeat the snake is they make it to where his arms, because his arms and his both arms, one's the tail and one's the head. And basically what they do is they split them so that they can't work together. And they beat them like that. And so again,
well, and you gotta mention that the student is a master of none.
Right.
But knows a little bit of each thing, so when they're fighting him, right, and they have to get up, he's taught the student how to get up on the wall like him, and that's how they're able to attack together.
Right. And that's why in the beginning the master said you're not strong enough to beat any of them. You have to team up with another to defeat the others. And you get there and you get toward the climax, and this is how they all end, right? And this is where I was like, I don't remember when they actually got the money, but the good guys defeat the bad guys in good, kung fu movie fashion, and boom, that's the end of the movie. That's the end of the movie. There is no
Let's flash to the future and see how they had kids in a car and they got a great job. No, boom, done.
Yeah, we beat the bad guys. We're walking out the room. End of the movie. Boom, just like that.
Into the sunset we go.
Right, and a lot of the movies, and I realized that a lot of the kung fu movies, that's what they did. They didn't have anything more than that, right? So.
Makes you wonder if Westerns stole that from Eastern style movies, because that's how Westerns. Just the cowboy riding off into that was it. That was the end of the.
Yeah, you don't know if he got the girl. You don't know again what he ate for dinner that night. It was just like, boom, that was the end of the movie. So for me, what I did love, I loved the martial arts about it. One thing I did do is I love how it's filmed. I mean, you had talked about like the filmography and how it is filmed, even with the bad dub. For me, I mean, I love that. It does take you back. It takes you back to a more simpler time. They're all wearing wigs, right? They all have wigs on. You could tell by like their perfect dyed hairline. The costumes, and I guess maybe at the time, and I probably need to know more about this as we get into the show, but it was in color, and I thought the colors were very vibrant. The other thing too that kind of got me into these movies was like the Wu-Tang Clan, the East Coast rap group, and they actually would use excerpts from different kung fu movies. And this was there was an excerpt from the movie when he's talking about the Venom clan, and the Venom clan is the most feared clan, and the student says, well, I don't understand why. And that line they use, the Wu-Tang clan used in a rap song, and I was like, oh, that's where they got this from. But obviously, you know, if you know anything about the Wu-Tang Clan, they were highly influenced by the Shaw Brothers productions and distributions of kung fu movies anyway. So yeah, I mean, that's the end of the movie. And again, if you were to ask me, and again, when me and Kyron had talked about what movies we want to do, I asked him, hey, if I was to ask you hands down, what's your favorite movie? Hands down, what's my favorite movie? This is what I'm going to tell you. So was there anything interesting or whatever that you want to talk about that movie or anything, Kyron?
I don't want to upset you, but I don't think I liked this movie as much as I would have liked this when I was a kid. Like,
Okay.
the whole kung fu thing.
Yeah.
Like, I was huge into it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I think at some point I broke away from the kung fu thing and went a different direction, and I never really... Like, the Cobra Kai TV show, that thing is huge, and I have, like, zero interest. And I've tried getting back into it, and it's just... Maybe the kung fu is just not with me anymore. That's weird to say. Like, I don't know. I'm more into, like, realistic reality stuff more so than I am the fake punching and sound effects and all that. And just even now, like, I don't know that I would be super hyped at a new kung fu movie. Like, have you heard of anything new coming out?
No.
That's martial art. You've got, they're gonna try and do another Karate Kid. Right?
Yeah, with Ralph Macchio and Jackie Chan.
Right? So, I mean,
yeah.
Right? See, even you're doing it. It's kung fu, but it's not really kung fu anymore. Right. It's more cinematic and more drama or whatever the Here's
the thing. You're not upsetting me. What I will say is I get it. I get what you're saying. Because for me, it's nostalgic. That's what it is for me. So would I go out and quickly go out, like if they did a remake, you know what, it would because it's a remake of my favorite movie. But if I was to go out like nowadays, there aren't any traditional martial arts movies at this point. Like I can't remember one where it was about martial arts. And I'm a big martial artist. I love martial arts. I've taken multiple martial arts. I have so much respect for them. But as of late, like all the good choreography stuff is like the Matrix type stuff, right? You see movies with like Jason Statham in it. And I know when I talked to you about this, I just got done watching The Beekeeper. But I like Jason Statham movies because he's actually a real martial artist, and his fight scenes are really dynamic. But a movie that specifically surrounds itself with martial arts, like I'll agree with you with Cobra Kai. I think I watched like the first 2 seasons, and that was it. I think they're on like season 6, and I'm not. I'm not going. I'm like, I'll probably watch it when there's nothing else to watch. But yeah,
you know what brings a little bit of it back is the Expendables.
Oh yes. Oh,
right. That kind of brings it back. So you've got Jet Li in there. He's an old school.
Right. Well,
like that was.
I love and we could totally talk about the Expendables because I mean that's my peak of action movie. Like every action star that was ever in an action movie are in those movies. And of course Stallone being like the executive producer and like director of that series of movies. It's all practical effects. He ain't doing nothing in the computer. He's blowing some shit up. So to see a lot of those people, and we'll definitely, if we could get into it, I'll definitely love to talk about those movies. But yeah, I mean, I could agree with you. I think the kung fu movies in that genre, again, that Shaw Brothers distribution genre, has its own nostalgia for me. Um, and I feel like that's where that stays. So I could definitely agree with you. It's not something that I would probably go out as of today and be like, yeah, I need to go watch that movie.
Well, and
Because
you don't see it anymore.
yeah,
Like I don't ever see it. We used to see it every year at the state fair, right? You used to always see it there,
hmm
and on all the talent shows, there was at least a dozen martial. But you just and Boy Scouts, I used to see it a lot in Boy Scouts.
yeah,
But even now, just to go to class, holy cow! Like they want like $400 to $500 a month,
oh
and
yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
I mean, I get it. It'd be a great exercise, I guess, but fun. I mean, you're talking your car payment.
Oh yeah. I got two kids, and they want $150 a month, and it's like only 2 days a week. So you're only getting, what, 8 classes, and they want $150 each kid, and I'm like, I can't afford that. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. Um. So okay. So we talked a little bit about it. Whatever. Let's give it a rating. Like I would like to do, and I would like to do a rating, maybe 1 through 5. And this is what I got. Shout out to the Last Action podcast. They're inspiration as far as like formatting for this, and actually they just posted their final 300th episode. I want to say today was they posted up their last episode, 300 episodes. And so they do a rating system at the end of each show where they do it like out of 5 stars. They actually call it 5 machine guns because it's like, action movies they talk about. So I would like to, let's do you want to rate, could you give this one a rating? Did you watch it enough to, kind of, like you said, yes, it might be different if you were a kid rating it versus today. But yeah, if I was to say, hey, Kyron, let's go watch this movie, we went to go see it as of today, if you had to give it a star rating, 1 out of 5, where would it land, and why, if you don't mind sharing?
2.5. 2.5 because I didn't go, what the hell did Sean make me watch at the end, right? I got to the end, I understood the storyline. I hate getting to the end of a movie going, what, I missed something and the movie just doesn't make sense, right? Like you said, the movie ended. Like there was a clear beginning, middle, and end, and we understood it all.
Right.
The costumes or wardrobe was great. The blood was a little bit iffy, and the sound was horrible. But it was what it was. Not a good solid 2.5.
Good. No, and you know what? That's not bad. You sit there and you think 2.5 is terrible, but 2.5 is average, right? I mean, that's right there, middle of the road.
And how old? I mean, this thing came out when I was born, so this is a 45-year-old movie that
Right.
held up.
Right. Oh, and I'm glad that it did. Like, and that's the other thing too. We look at older movies, and that's a consideration, right? Does it stand the test of time? Right. And I probably watched it, I was born in 81, so this was 3 years prior to me being born. So let's just say I watched it in the 90s, right? 10 years old, 11 years old, or whatever. And I thought it was great then. And it falls down, into a special nostalgic place in my heart, obviously. For me, if I was to give this one, if younger me, I would have gave it a 5, right? Younger me, it would have been a 5, hands down. But if I was to look at it today, and going based upon, because I haven't watched it within maybe the last year or so, I would give this one I'd give it a solid 3. Because you're right, it had, if we're looking at it, technically, the plot was good. I felt, right, it did make sense. The way it was shot, it was, again, I totally agree with you. Beginning, middle, end. That's all she wrote, right? It did have a little twist as to figuring out who was who, and and I think that was the biggest thing for me as far as remembering all the different kung fu movies I'd watched, and why this one was profound, was because it made you, it engaged you to say, who the hell are these? Like, who's the Scorpion, right? Who was the last guy? And to me, until you finally got to the end, you didn't know who he was. So I thought they did a very good part with that. So again, I'd give it a solid 3. So yeah. So a good solid 3. So that is the 5 Deadly Venoms, guys. And so what on our next recording, Kyron? What are we gonna talk about for the next recording here? What are we gonna do? We're gonna do Dazed and Confused. Is that what we're gonna do? Or we're gonna?
I don't know. Can you make time in your busy schedule to work that in? I mean,
yes, and I'll buy it. I'll buy it on digital. So, because it's Kyron's favorite movie. He said, and when I asked him, he was like, Dazed and Confused. And I loved, because that time of when it came out, I was watching movies heavy then. And I should have watched it, and I feel it was like one of those ones that kind of went under the radar for me because it had a bunch of people in it that I would have watched if I would have known. Okay, so next week, or our next recording, we'll be doing Dazed and Confused. You know, with that, Kyron, you got anything you want to add before we kind of wrap up our show here?
Nope. I hope you guys enjoyed our little review of 5 Deadly Venoms.
Okay. So yeah, my name is Sean Flac 2.0. This is Kyron. Kyron, you want me to add those numbers, just the 69 on the end of that when I talk about you, or do you want it just to be Kyron, or do you want it to be...
It's 79, not 69. But I appreciate the sentiment. But yeah, all my socials are still Kyron79. So yeah, Kyron79 is good.
Okay. So got my co-host here, Kyron79. Tune in. Again, this is going to be a 4-parter. We'll kind of see where it goes. Really excited to work on Kyron on the project. And we'll see you guys in the next one when we talk about Dazed and Confused. All right. Peace out.
Peace.